Rapido have captured that look of the prototype perfectly, and it really is a joy to watch it just going around the track. A big hello to you. I hope I find you well. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you up here to Weir Yard. And today we're going to be delving into the world of N Gauge. That's right. I know it's something that a lot of you guys do model, and I do get a lot of requests to feature more of it on the channel. And Rapido Trains have very kindly sent over their two newest releases in N Gauge for us to take a closer look at. This is the Metropolitan Vickers Kobo, more commonly referred to under the BR top scheme as the Class 28, and also the Conflat P Wagon with its matching containers. Of course, these made up the bulk of the wagons in the Condor container trains that the Metrovic Class 28s were commonly associated with, and there's a very, very famous Terence Cuneo painting showing the Class 28 at speed on this working. And if you do like the look of anything that you see in today's video, we do have an affiliate link in the description box down below that takes you to Rails of Sheffield to help you find the models featured and all of the different livery versions that are available. But without further ado, let's see, does Rapido's N Gauge release really live up to expectations? Is it as good as their 00 models have been thus far? Well, come with me and we'll take a good close look, with support in today's video from Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Browse the full range available today through their UK stockist tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Buy, sell or exchange any age or any gauge. Call them now for the very best price. Check them out today at the link below. But come with me, and I'm really excited to show you these all new models from Rapido Trains. On the channel we do get asked an awful lot about whether we're going to delve into the world of N Gauge, and I'd like to thank Rapido Trains UK for very generously sending over a couple of samples of their new model in this very, very popular gauge. We've got the Class 28 Metrovic Kobo, and we've also got the Conflat P, which is a wagon which is probably quite famously associated with the Kobo, insofar as these locomotives were initially put to work on the Condor, which was a shortened version of container door-to-door service, which was one of the BR flagship modernisation route flows, which kind of explored the developments of container traffic. Now, containers as we know them today weren't really quite on the scene, but certainly BR and prior to BR, the big four companies were quite early adopters of the potential of what container traffic could do in terms of reducing the amount of double handling of loads. And really it was setting the groundwork for the container trains and the container terminals that we're much more used to today. In fact, they've taken over as being probably one of the more dominant forms of traffic, not just on the railways, but on the roads as well. Now, the Class 28 would probably have just been a footnote in diesel development if it wasn't for two different things. It wasn't massively successful, and this was down to its rather unusual two-stroke Crossley engines, and being a little bit experimental, they were unreliable as well, and unfortunately that ended up being the death knell for this 20-strong fleet of locomotives. But they were featured in the Reverend Awdry's Thomas the Tank Engine stories as a character called Boko, And that probably pressed them into the psyche of an awful lot of children through the decades. Hornby 00 as well in the 1960s chose the then new Kobo locomotives for one of the diesel outline models that they introduced in both 3-rail and 2-rail. Now, because of that, it's something that I guess people were exposed to, and the very unusual wheel arrangement of a Co bogie, it's 3 axles, and the Bow bogie, which is just the 2, really made it stand apart to anything that ran in the UK. And I can only think of an example, and I think it's India's railways, which used a similar wheel arrangement, and this was down to the weight of the locomotive and being able to distribute that. On the end, we've got the catalogue number of 905002, and this is the BR green with warning panels and listed as DC stroke silent. That essentially means that there's no sound decoder in this, and this is the running number D5711. There's nothing much else on the box. We've got the line art of the Wonder Loaf, as it was nicknamed. Loaf because it looked a bit like a big loaf of bread, and Wonder, I suspect, because many a shed foreman probably wondered whether it was going to work today. The box itself is quite a durable plastic box with just a clip-on lid which just pops off quite readily, and you can see the locomotive in there, and already I can see there's a lot of detail for a locomotive that is actually quite tiny. Just pulling that out from the foam, and I'm just laying that across the palm of my hand, and it really does just fit within the palm of my hand. That is a tiny locomotive, but without the visual cues, it would actually be quite difficult to tell this as being N gauge, because I can already see we have a huge wealth of detail on these, and I'm particularly impressed with the pipe work on the underside. I can also see that there appears to be a lot of cast metal in here, and certainly the weight is quite high for something this small. I mean, it's absolutely tiny, thickness pretty much of one of my fingers. That's the sort of size that we're looking at. I'm going to put that just to one side there, and then I'm going to get out a few of the other bits and pieces in the packaging, because we also have, not content with the amount of detail that's factory applied, we've also got all these head code discs and buffer beam detailing, so with all the pipes and stuff, and these are here for the end user to apply should they so choose. And there's a lot of detail there, and they're all ready finished, no painting required, and certainly they do look quite special. I do like the pipework, the multicoloured pipework. We've got blacks, oranges, whites, there's a bit of yellow in there in some of those parts, and that is quite impressive. We've also got this black plastic wand. And anybody who's bought a Rapido dynamometer car, certainly when they were originally commissioned by Rails of Sheffield, these came with them, and this was to turn on and off the lights in the carriages. And it's made a reappearance with the Kobo, because you can use this to turn on and off the red tail lights when it's running on DC. For DCC users, you don't really need to bother, because you can turn them on and off using the function keys. But it's an interesting, a really nice way of doing it. It means you don't have to remove the locomotive from the track to gain access to little dip switches underneath, which is how I've seen it also done with some other manufacturers' models. Front face of the locomotive is captured perfectly. We've got this sort of drooping 3-window effect, very slab fronted. These were not at what you would call aerodynamic locomotives, but certainly they have a curious charm all to themselves. Now, the locomotive prime mover was made by Crossley, and it was 2-stroke, and the reason that BR, as part of the pilot scheme, went for the 2-stroke prime mover with these really was just as an evaluation to compare it to the much more common 4-stroke. Now, for those of you who don't know, two-stroke essentially means that there is an upstroke and a downstroke for every full cycle of the combustion process, whereas the four-stroke has two lots of up and down to gain the full cycle, hence four strokes and two strokes. With a four-stroke, essentially that's just suck, brings in the air, squeeze, compresses it, bang, which is when the fuel is injected into a diesel, and because the heat generated by the compression, that immediately ignites, and that bang forces the piston down. That's your power stroke. And then blow, which is when the exhaust valve opens and all of the exhaust gases are pushed out, and then that cycle repeats. So suck, squeeze, bang, blow, suck, squeeze, bang, blow. With two-stroke, it's a lot more intricate in that you need ports in the crankcase, and you're actually using the underside of the piston as part of the engine's running cycle. So you've got the power stroke when it's coming down. So you've got the fuel air mix that's already been induced into the cylinder explodes, and as that goes down, the piston exposes ports in the side of the cylinder, and so as it goes down, the exhaust port will open and the explosion is still expanding, so it will start to actually leave the cylinder, helped by the compression of the air underneath the cylinder in the crankcase, and you have a transfer port from below to above. As that becomes exposed, then the air is forced out under pressure because it's been compressed round the transfer port and actually chases the exhaust gases out, fills the cylinder. Then as it goes up, it covers the exhaust port and the transfer port, starts to compress that air. At the same time, it starts to suck in air underneath, and it's using that upward cycle to draw in a fresh charge of air, compresses the air above, fuel mix is sprayed in, explodes, and so you get power compression, exhaust induction, power compression, exhaust induction. And that's essentially just a very, very brief, simplistic guide to two-stroke versus four-stroke. So essentially what it means is you get a lot more power. You get twice the power cycles from an engine per volume than you would if that engine were running in a four-stroke cycle. So that in turn meant that this was probably pretty much the most powerful of the Type 2 locomotives, certainly by weight. A very powerful locomotive. It did need the Kobo wheel arrangement because of an increased weight to it. On a Bobo, it would have been too heavy. And it did also mean that the locomotive did have a pretty good grip, certainly better than the Bobo type 2s, because it had that extra axle, and that was actually quite helpful. You can see as well that the locomotive is not symmetrical, it's asymmetric. So we've got down this side, the cab door is actually moved quite far down, and this has been captured by Rapido very, very well. And then at the other end, you've got this cooler group, the fans on the side, and the cab door right up close to the window. That's the end that's also got the fan at the top. I'm not sure whether I think it's sucked in through the sides. There were filters behind these and then blew the hot air out the top. On the other side, we've also got a large fan body there. And then we've also got the cab door is moved along. So the cab doors, the left side, as you look at the body, is always moved back, and the right side hard up against the cab. But then we've also got all of these vents down the side. And these can be a very slab-sided locomotive. Certainly Hornby 00 really struggled to get the Kobo to look right, and the Hornby 00 model from the 1960s always seemed very slab-sided. It's quite a Spartan side. You can see here we don't get rivet detail, you don't get panel gaps, anything like that. It's a very smooth-sided locomotive, but Rapido have captured that look of the prototype perfectly. Again, we've got the curve of the windows, and these feature the later rebuilt form. As built, these side windows actually wrapped around. The glass was curved, went round this pillar somewhat, but that made them very prone to fall out. And that was one of the issues that the Class did have. And you could imagine when pootling along in the Condor freight trains, having your windscreen in front of you suddenly just fall out and disappear into the 4th foot must have been a little bit unnerving. So they were returned en masse to the manufacturer for rectification, and outwardly the biggest issue that was changed were these shape of these windows. I've never seen a model released in the original form. They were changed quite quickly. So as it stands, this is perfectly okay, and it does allow for Rapido to produce all members of the class for pretty much all variants of the livery options. The livery itself, we've got the BR green, but they had this duck egg blue stripe just down, low down on the body side, and all of these fan grills were picked out again in that duck egg grey, which is kind of like a blue grey, and you can see there it differs from the grey of the roof panels, and Rapido have got that perfectly right. To my eyes, that is the right colour, and it could have been quite easy to just use the same grey, but they've not fallen into that trap. The printing is absolutely clear, and certainly the closer I look at this, there's also some writing, it appears there. I can't actually read that on the camera viewfinder, but I've got every faith that that will be reproduced perfectly. The windows are flush glazed, and it's only under this cruel magnification. And you just remember, you can see my fingers in the shot there. This is tiny, and yet it's only under this cruel magnification that we can see slight prismatic effect around the edges. We've also got separately applied windscreen wipers, and then moving further down, there is a lot of detail on the front with this light array, separately fitted metal handrails, and the lights too are fully functional on this and directionally controlled. No sprung buffers, but to be honest, really wouldn't expected that. And we've got the standard N gauge type couplings. These are push fit into what appear to be kinematic sockets there, and you can see these are self-centering kinematics. These pockets actually do allow you a great deal of flexibility with the type of couplings that you use, and I'm actually going to be fitting these with the West Hill Wagon Works magnetic couplings, the type that I use for my 009 models. So ironically, this is going to be able to be running on Mynydth Tatus. On the underside, we've got drive to both bogies, and just looking there, I think we've got what appears to be, that looks like a traction tyre. So we've got a single traction tyre on that wheel, and then when we look to the back, we've got a single traction tyre on that wheel. So we've got one traction tyre for each side, but the other wheels are just metal faced. And we've got a drive down to both axles on the bow bogie, and the centre one is an idler on the co bogie, and we've got drive to the outer axles. So we've got a lot of traction weight and decent drive actually. The wheels all metal, flanges not too big, they do actually look pretty good. And all in all, this does capture the look and feel of what would have otherwise just been a footnote in the development of the pilot scheme diesels, although one locomotive did actually survive through many quirks of fate. As the fleet were withdrawn as non-standard and unreliable in the late 60s, actually only just beating the steam locomotives they were supposed to replace, BR did actually give thought to re-engineering the entire class, as they had done with the Class 30 fleet, for them to become the Class 31s. However, with a fleet of only 20, they were deemed too small a fleet to really persist with, despite the fact that all of the other equipment was bulletproof reliable on them. If it wasn't for the prime mover, these were actually a really good design of locomotive. locomotive. So they were withdrawn en masse and sent to meet the cutter's torch not that long after the steam locomotives they were supposed to replace, except for one, which was transferred to the Rail Technical Centre at Derby, and in turn it was used to haul test trains into the 1970s, with pretty much just remaining in BR Green with a departmental number applied. And because of this, it survived long enough that when it took its tow to the scrapyard, for some reason, it was dropped off and left for dead in a head shunt just outside Swindon. And despite the best efforts of the local child population who tried to set fire to it, I think they pushed cardboard underneath. There was still diesel fuel in the diesel tanks, and they set fire and actually charred the body side. Luckily, it didn't go up in flames. And in the early 1980s, its rarity and provenance as the dabble into two-stroke engine technology was recognised, and she was saved for preservation, although still not yet run in preservation, but undergoing an intensive restoration as part of the fleet of the Class 15 preservation group. And really looking forward to seeing her run at the East Lancs at Bury. Looking to the side, we've got metal handrails, and these are really robust. I like the metal handrails because you're going to be handling this a little bit, and certainly they are pretty much immune to damage. The bogies capture that very peculiar shape that the Metrovic Kobo had. Captures it really, really well, and we've got the two different bogie designs. Certainly these were very, very heavy duty, and we can see all the springs and the brake gear, and there's also cutouts there you can see, prototypically correct, right through to the wheels. They are actually really, really well done. I'm going to put it now onto the rolling road track. I want to demonstrate to you the lighting function on DC. This is my DC test track, and I'm just going to power it up, and you can see on the end there we've got the lights for the forward direction of travel, and then we send it the other way, you can just make out the red lights. Now those in and of themselves are exquisite, but that's where this locomotive's party trick comes in with the magnetic wand. And what we need to do is just wave this over the roof fan, and you can see those red lights have gone off. Wave it back and they come on. Wave it back and they go off. I'm just going to put them back on again, and that is a really great feature, and certainly one of the bugbears of a lot of modelers is having a locomotive pulling a train but still showing its red marker lights between the locomotive and first vehicle in the train. Rapido have solved this problem incredibly easily just using the magnetic wand that they already produce for their other products, such as the dynamometer car. Running on DC is super smooth, and it's quite apparent that this is a powerful locomotive with plenty to give and with really good pickup from those axles. I'm going to turn now to DCC fitting this model, and for this you're going to need a Next 18 decoder, and I've chosen the Trainomatic Next 18 decoder available through their UK stockists tramfabrique.co.uk, and I'm going to be showing you exactly how to fit one of these to your model if you've got the DC ready version and want to upgrade it to DCC operation. The locomotive itself, it's quite easy to get into. What we need to do is to make use of, well, I've got a complete new set of these jeweler's screwdrivers tools, and I've got one here that is just a poker, a very sharp metal point, and I'm going to use these to just get in down the side and just feel for, there should be 4 clips, and with this I can just gently tease the body out. I'm going to look to the other side as well, and I just help that free, and you can see that the body very easily comes clear. It's not loose, but once you unclip it, it's very readily able to just be pulled free. Now, what I would say to you is the co-end is where the cooler groups are. So let's just remember that. And of course, the roof fan as well is over the top of this DCC blanking plate, and that appears to be where the mechanism with a magnetic reed switch is hidden away for controlling the red lights on DCC. To take this out is just simply a case of pulling it free with a fingernail, and you can see there it's certainly a quite interesting designed blanking plate with that cutout to go around that plug. Taking the decoder, I'm just going to take that from the packaging. The Train-O-Matic Next 18 decoder is pretty small, so we've got no problems whatsoever fitting this in. Again, just align it with the socket and gently but firmly push it into place. You'll feel it click. It doesn't need a huge amount of force. If you're having to force it, the chances are you've not got it lined up. And we've also got a lot of space in here too, if you wanted to fit a smart power pack soldered to those terminals. I would recommend the smaller of the two smart power packs that Train-O-Matic produce, and that looks as though that might be possible to fit it quite neatly in just above the motor. Whilst we've got the top off, we can see there the central can type motor with dual brass flywheels front and back, and certainly this is a really neat interior with provision just there for a speaker in this ready-made enclosure. So sound fitting, if you want to go sound fitted, you can buy it as such direct from the manufacturer from new, or you can fit your own sound files and decoders in if you wish. We've also got, I'm just going to show you, a lot of detail too. Cab interiors, we've got some basic seats, brake wheel, some detail on the cab bulkhead, and I'll tell you now, actually, you can't really see any of this, but it is there. And then we've got tiny surface mount style LEDs producing the lights front and rear on the locomotive. When it comes to put it back together, it's just simply a case of lining up the body and just gently just sliding that on, just get it lined up, and you'll hear it click into place, and there we have the locomotive DCC fitted and ready to go. When it comes to running, I had this running on Minith Tatis, which whilst it's an 009 layout, has the correct gauge of track to be able to allow N gauge models to run, and it ran really, really well. I was able to pull a reasonable length train behind it with no real sign of slipping, and it's clear that those two traction tyres are doing their job just fine, and they're quite innovatively placed such that we're not going to end up with traction tyres being forced to slip, which they would if they were at both sides of the same axle, if that makes sense. Certainly this model performed faultlessly, and it really is a joy to watch it just going around the track. The detail is sublime, and it really did look smart, just chugging its way through the Welsh scenery, albeit at a little bit of a different scale to what it should be. Turning to the wagon, this is an example of the Conflat P, which is the perfect accompaniment to the Class 28 Metro Vic. We've got catalogue number 921009, and this is with crimson and bauxite containers with the running number B933343. And the Conflat P is an interesting choice. Certainly it's not one that I'm aware of having appeared ready to run in any scale before, so I think that this is a perfect addition for the Class 28. We do have some additional pipework detail here and coupling hooks. Again, this is stuff that if Rapido hadn't provided these, I don't think anybody would have complained or missed them. The fact that they are provided just shows just how much attention has been put in to getting these wagons right. Now I'm just going to slide it out here. And this somewhat unusual wagons in terms of they take a BA and a BD type container, and these containers are removable. They kind of push fit into place. There's a lot of weight in this wagon, an awful lot of weight. Makes me wonder whether the containers actually contain additional weights. But the look of the Conflat P is captured perfectly, and when we look at all that printing on the sole bar, it is perfectly legible. Now, I can't actually read a lot of that on the camera. I can see the running number is crisp and clear. The works plate for the wagon looks okay, and there to work between Hendon and I can't actually read it. I'm sure you can probably do that on the big screen, and under magnification it's really going to look good. And we've got all of the rivet detail and other printing on there. Tiny little, we've got these sort of lips at either end, captured well, the flanges and the gussets and the rivet detail. Really, really nice. The buffers, not sprung, again, not an issue. And we've got the standard N gauge couplings fitted there. These are in what appear to be slightly flexible. These are actually reminiscent of the design of the NEM pockets we get in 00, and these you can see there just pull out, so you can upgrade these to other couplings if you so wish. Now, as you can see there, the containers do come off, and this really is exquisite. We've got the full detail of this very open frame that these wagons had. And in case you're wondering, the other container comes free as well. And look at that. I mean, that's the kind of detail that even in 00 we would be very impressed with. But this is N gauge. You can see there, very, very small wagon. All the brake rigging is perfect. And then we've got these very free-running metal wheels. Flanges look good. W-irons on the side as well. Really, really nice. And I just can't fault anything with these. I'm just amazed at how good a wagon this small actually is. I mean, that is breathtaking. Look at that. Got all of the mesh detail of how this wagon would have been put together, and it's a really good way of actually seeing just how wagons are constructed. Now, I can feel instantly that there is quite a substantial amount of weight in these containers, and I suspect they've got like a metal insert, but again, the detail on these is exquisite, and I would love to know if Rapido either do or are planning to release packs of these as separate items, because I can imagine N gauge modelers would find these a real asset to have on their model layouts. And certainly the detail on these is comparable to what you would expect in 00, something that is 8 times the cubic area of this for the same model. Certainly that is incredibly impressive, and you can see the printing on there. There's no smearing between the different colours. I think that roof is a separate piece. We've got the corrugated metal ends. Really, it's just perfect. Absolutely perfect. And then we've got the BA container here, slightly different livery. And again, the printing is really, really sharp. The detail is crisp. And there's a lot of weight in this. And certainly this makes up a really great package. And this is definitely offering an amazing value for money. The Conflat P Wagon ran incredibly well, helped by that extra weight in those containers. A full rake of those behind one of these locomotives really would be something special on any layout. So we come next to the scores. First up is build quality, and I have to say I'm really impressed. You can see that I have been squishing this, moving it around, throwing it around, and it's just taken everything that I've thrown at it. There is nothing on this that has shown any signs of coming loose, of breaking off. The metal handrails are incredibly durable, and I'm actually pushing quite hard there, and particularly all this pipework underneath, incredibly durable, and something that the larger scale model from another manufacturer of the Class 28 does have a propensity to need that pipework to be constantly be re-glued back on. We get none of that problem here in the N Gauge model, and certainly everything about this is incredibly well put together. So it's definitely full marks for the Class 28. The same could be said for the Conflat P. It's a great model, great realization. I love that very open chassis, and everything about it just oozes quality. So again, nothing to fault, 10 out of 10 all round. On the running quality, this ran really, really well. I have to say I was a little bit skeptical of the provision of traction tyres, but I like the layout with one per axle of the two axles rather than both on the same axle, and that just means that they're not going to try and fight against each other, which would tend to leave deposits on the track more so than the arrangement that we've got here. It ran on Mynydde Tatus incredibly well, actually, going through the somewhat overscale Welsh scenery with the greatest of ease, and it really had a grace as it ran. The kinematic couplings too did help on the tighter corners, and the Conflat P as well showed no real signs of derailments and just handled that track pretty well. So I'm going to give it a 9.9. On DCC fitting and innovation, it really couldn't have been simpler. Getting the body of this model, it didn't fight back. The model is well put together. That body isn't going to just accidentally fall off. But when it came to DCC fitting, it didn't put up a struggle, and inside this, despite the huge amount of tractive force we've got here, the weight that's built into this, we've got plenty of room with that next 18 socket, meaning that you're not going to be struggling to DCC fit this. Natively, it supports sound too, and we've got that speaker enclosure, and there's still space in here to be able to fit in some kind of stay alive as well. This really is a great thought out internal arrangement, really putting the modeler first in terms of ease of doing what they want. I also like the arrangement of the front and rear lights with that magnetic wand to simply turn the red lights on and off for the DC users, and that is a great option. So I'm going to give this a 9.8. On accuracy and quality of finish, there really is nothing to fault with this. It's actually one of the best renditions of a Class 28 that I've seen in model form, and unlike the very first, the Hornby 001, it doesn't fall into any of those slab-sided weird failings. It really does look and feel like the substantial beast that this Type 2 was in reality, and it's something that these sides could easily have become a bit plasticky and a bit fake, and they haven't. Everything about this really does ooze quality. On the Conflat P as well, I love that very open frame of the underside, but it hasn't compromised anything, and it seems that Rapido have really made a habit with these of making sure that everything is right without compromising the durability of the model and the running quality. So there's just nothing but to award the full 10 out of 10 for this category. On value for money, the Class 28 is available, and we've got an affiliate link in the description down below, for £101 for the DC ready locomotive, and that is actually a pretty good price for what you're getting. If you want to go for the factory sound option, they're available for £186. And one of the standouts for me is the RTC livery. Now, the real locomotive never actually got that livery whilst working for the RTC, but as a what if might have been livery, it really does look stunning on this locomotive, although it is a few pounds extra because of the additional amounts of decoration that the model features. Certainly that would be my personal recommendation for the standout livery. When it comes to the Conflat P, We've got the single packs at £25.50 and also a value triple pack at £74.50, which makes it really easy to quickly build up a prototypical Condor container train. So it's really, really great, and I'm going to give this a 9.3 out of 10. And that gives us an overall score of 49.0. And I would rate this as being one of the standout models for me of the year. This is the first locomotive that I've reviewed in N, and this has really waved the flag for the scale. It is an absolutely exquisite model, and I'd like to thank Rapido Trains for sending this and the Conflat P over for review. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative as well, and I'd really love to hear from you in the comments section down below just what you thought about the Conflat P and the Metropolitan Vickers Kobo Class 28 that was featured in today's video, and of course a big thank you to Rapido Trains for sending them over for review. I'd certainly love to hear from you if these are something that you've seen and thought, I really need that for my layout. Or perhaps you've been really impressed with just how good N gauge models are becoming. Is this a scale that maybe you've overlooked in the past, but you're thinking, actually, I could get quite a lot in the space that I have available, and these models look a lot better than the ones I remember from 20 years ago. Certainly, it's something that's maybe really reconsider about doing some N gauge modelling. I know my eyesight's not as good as it used to be, but really the detail on these models is absolutely sublime. And we've got an affiliate link down below taking you to Rails of Sheffield, where you can find the models featured in today's review and also all of the other different livery options. And don't forget as well that we've got merchandise available. You can find them in the link as well. And you can also head on over to Patreon and help support the channel for as little as $1 a month with many different tiers of rewards, and keep helping the channel to make the videos that you want to see. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself, and it'd be great to see you next time. Until then, happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. Additional support comes from Rails of Sheffield. Sell to the name you know and trust. Family-run business purchasing collections for over 50 years. From single items to lifetime collections, no collection is too small or too big. Buy, sell or exchange, any age or any gauge. Rails will take everything: locos, coaches, wagons, track work, controllers, accessories. In fact, they'll take absolutely everything, and certainly will not cherry pick the best items. Rails are only a phone call away. Call them now for the very best price and get instant cash payment or same-day transfer. Check them out today at the link below. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 Class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, Jennifer Horton, and James Beckett. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.